start introducing myself. My name is Kiran. I am a machine learning engineer at Knowtions Research. I will be moderating this conversation. It will be like a fair side kind of chat, and we will cover 3 questions. First, I would like to introduce Jennifer and Christina. So Jennifer is the lead data scientist at Sun Life Financial's Analytics Center of Excellence. It's a large name. She's helping the company to build intelligent data solutions to better serve their clients. Her past experience in the field includes Globe and Mail, Script, and Slice. She holds a master's degree in machine learning from University College London and a bachelor's degree in math from University of Waterloo. Jennifer is a strong proponent of gender diversity in her field, and she partners with the University of Waterloo to support young females to pursue careers in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Right? I will keep moving to introduce Christina now, and then you can guys make any correction on additions to that introduction. Christina is the co-founder of and CEO of Knowtions Research. By chance, the same company I work with. Knowtions is a company that applies artificial intelligence to develop a new generation of pay-how-you-live insurance products. This is in which everyone can own their own health risk and it can be insured. So the company, patentable Lydia AI, risk prediction engine, leverage on big data, and it's to help health insurers to protect customers' health and to grow the insurable base. So ideally, we want to make every person to be insurable. Christina leads the intersection of operations, finance, and culture, binding to lay a strong foundation on people, investors, and industry advisors. She wants to propel Knowtions growth with all this. Knowtions is a venture-backed by Alibaba Entrepreneurs Fund and Information Venture Partners. So as I said, we are going to go with the fireside chat. We have three questions. And then let's start with the first question. I think for Christina, the first question. What were some successful approaches to get the buy-in from business partners, and how to actually start your ML project?
Thank you, Karen, and thank you everybody for joining us today. In lieu of a fireside for our fireside chat, I actually have a humidifier on my desk, so we're going to call this around the humidifier chat. So the first question is really interesting because as a startup, or whether you're an external vendor trying to get a machine learning project into an insurance company, or you are the internal data science, technology innovation, digital team that Jennifer is a part of, at the end of the day, you need to get key business stakeholder buy-in in order to do, very bluntly, get budget for your project, right? So it doesn't really matter if you're an external vendor or an internal vendor. It's slightly different, but not quite. So now I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of an external vendor. So if you're an external vendor, which I hope there's probably a lot of startup folks here today, your first point of contact with the company will most often be either the data science team or some sort of digital innovation lab or some sort of digital transformation team. Your champions might come from these departments, but be super, super, super careful because, well, bluntly put, these teams don't actually hold the budget. They have to do something that's called a chargeback to the business unit themselves. So don't get excited. Don't get excited about your technology. They're gonna get, but make sure that you don't actually get distracted by the technology KPIs, the really cool things that these teams want to try. It's really important that when you're engaging with your first point of contact, that you work with them, and you actually, it's their job to actually bring you into ultimately the business unit whose problem you're going to be solving, right? So now your first job when you get in contact with these big corp, or when you're trying to get a new project started, is, hey, who am I solving this problem for? So now that you've identified who your business unit is, what happens next? Now, the first job, super practically, is to map out that business unit's entire business workflow, right? In the example, let's take an easy one. For insurance, the claims processing department, when a new claims comes in, how does it go from, how does it go from evaluating what the claim, detecting whether or not it's fraud to actually pay out? Map out that entire workflow, because that's going to help you do three things actually. It's going to help you identify where the KPI is, right? So what problem are you actually solving? Where is this bottleneck that you need to actually solve for, that whatever machine learning project you're proposing is? In a very quick example that we did for operational excellence, we were doing anomaly or fraud detection, right? Even this, it sounds simple, but we really have to think, okay, where does it fit into the business unit's actual workflow? And it's not as obvious as you think it's going to be, right? And in this day and age, you've probably heard you got to get the right KPIs. But if you just, as a vendor or as a team, if you just go into the business unit team and be like, hey guys, what's your KPI? The reality is that they're not going to tell you. So you kind of have to go in a roundabout way of asking them. And the easiest way to do that we found in our experience is actually to map out their workflow, right? And you'd be surprised how many teams have never actually seen their entire workflow get mapped out, right? So it adds a lot of value immediately to the business unit. You gain a lot of credibility, and it opens that conversation, because what you're saying is, hey, we've actually seen this as a best practice workflow. Where do you actually differ? Where are your friction points, right? What do you actually need? And in that process, you're going to get them to spit out what their KPI is for that, right? And after you get that KPIs, here's what you're going to do. You're not going to just stop there. You're going to actually dig just a little bit deeper to figure out what's underlying that KPI. And we're going to get to why in just a second. But when you get to the KPI, you got to ask them, why are these KPIs important to you? How does it drive the entire business unit forward, right? Why do you think your team is responsible? What happens if your team doesn't reach these KPIs, right? So as an example that we actually faced as a team, our client told us that their KPI was to improve the hit rate of the investigation. What that means is they need to actually reject more fraud from the amount of claims that they were investigating, right? We learned to ask them, why was this KPI important? Why was all of this? Because doing so actually got us to the underlying drivers of what's actually going to propel our project forward. And now this is the most important step. So you got the business unit, you got the workflows mapped out, you got the the workflows, you got the KPIs, you got the bottlenecks, and the last thing is you need the ROI. And this is super important because the KPI is not the ROI, right? This is actually like a bit of a mind kind of thing, but this is how you're going to get buy-in. If you're going to get buy-in from the business unit, you need to convince them that there is ROI in your project, and the ROI is not the KPI. That's why in the previous step, it was super important for you to actually dig just a little bit deeper to ask them, okay, so you've set this KPI, why is this important, right? In the example of fraud, the reason it was so important for that team to actually catch more fraud as a proportion of the number of claims they were investigating was really because the claims digitization process was happening, right? And as a result of that, more claims were coming their way much, much, much faster, right? So if they don't find a way to actually get really good at investigating claims, when their claim volume, 2x's, they get really, really screwed without hiring more people, and they don't have resources to do that. So now, because we found out for that, we were able to build an ROI model that showed that we can catch the majority of fraud they were already doing in something like and investigate 40% less claims, right? So that's how we build out the ROI models. And when you do that, that becomes a super, super, super compelling conversation, right? And when you're giving that ROI conversation, you want to make sure that you are telling the business unit a very clear and crisp why you are the only one who can solve it for them, right? And where are you going to get that answer? You're going to get that answer from when they're telling you about their bottlenecks, right? The bottlenecks, you need to tease it out because it's going to help you shape the value proposition of your solution to actually meet that problem, right? Chances are they tried a few things. It probably didn't always work. They might have had used all of their features, the performance still crappy, whatever it is. You want to figure out what that is and tailor an argument around that, right? So how do you seal the deal? You seal the deal with two things: the ROI and why you are uniquely positioned to essentially solve it for them, right? And in our post-workshop little handout, I've written this framework out. So it goes from the workflow to identify the KPIs and bottlenecks, and lastly, the ROI model and why you're uniquely positioned to solve it. So that's how we at Knowtions as a company have had like a lot of good results working with clients to get buy-in on machine learning projects. That's it.
So I understand that now we have an awesome ROI model, and then in parallel we have and we have the buy-in. So they are convinced, right? Yeah. They're convinced that you have a good ROI model, and then in parallel we have your researcher, your data scientist working on awesome ML models as well, right? That's I think the next step to after the buy-in you have to actually build your model. So Jennifer, I bet we have some hurdles on the way. So what will be some hurdles you faced when convincing your business partners to actually use our models? How to actually use our models up to build this whole amazing thing, machine learning based.
Right. Thanks, Kieran, and thanks to everyone for joining our fireside or humidifier today.
Sorry, Jennifer, you were on mute. I just unmuted you.
Oh, was I on mute? Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying thanks.
Jennifer, you are lagging a lot. Can you? Everybody can see or it froze?
Am I okay now? How's the audio now?
Okay, now it's good. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, awesome. There's gonna. I believe there's gonna be a bit of lag. Just bear with me. Okay. But as Kieran was saying, once you've built the solution, you got your buy-in, now it's time to convince your business partners, your stakeholders, to use it. In my experience, there's been two hurdles that we've had to overcome in the past when doing that. One is around efficiency. How efficient is your model compared to the status quo, the insurance industry? I'll start first with efficiency. So we as data scientists, we love to report metrics like AUC, precision, recall, but they mean relatively nothing to our business partners. They're not familiar with those metrics. What they would like to know is how can this model do better than what they're doing right now? So instead, what we found successful and effective and resonates with our business partners is reporting metrics like lift and gain. How is this doing? How is this model more efficient than the current business process? So for example, if we build a churn model, we can report that this model is able to capture 40% of churns by just looking at 20% of the population. So that's a lift of 2. That's 2 times better than what they're doing right now. And that's easier for them to understand than reporting an ROC of, say, 0.7, 0.6. What does that really mean? And there are, for practitioners out there in the audience, there's a Python package, scikit-plot, that quickly maps out and charts these metrics for you. So we have that in our back pocket whenever we're ready to go to the business and present our results. Second aspect is explainability. This is very important when it comes to our industry, because once we build a model and made a prediction, we have to be able to justify why we denied somebody life insurance. We need to back up our predictions with key drivers of why this person was given life insurance and why they weren't. So I learned this the hard way when we built it was a marketing model, and they asked, so why is someone going to sell off all of their funds and deplete their accounts? And this was my first foray, first model at Sun Life. And we as data scientists, we usually go with the best performing models. So typically right now, they are XGBoost, random forest models, black box models that are hard to explain. But I learned that you can still explain these black box models using methods like SHAP and LIME. They are able to tell you for a certain prediction why this person is going to churn, why this person is not appropriate to insure life insurance. So as I mentioned, there are these Python packages out there. I recommend SHAP. Also, ELI5 is a good package too, to help explain your models so that your business partners can trust the results.
Okay, so I understand now that we have a model and then it's actually running. They are convinced that not only the metrics, the machine learning metrics or math behind it is provable, but also it's also supported by a good ROI model, and also all the KPIs they wanted to see from the business point of view. So after the fact, so your model is running, so far so good. So how did you show, this is a question actually for both of you, how did you show your models actually added value? Those models were adding value running now. Were there any unexpected challenges in doing so?
This is a super neat question for us at this very moment as a Knowtions team, and there's people in this from our team in this seminar as well. It's an interesting question because what happens when the KPI changes? What that you set, that sounded really great when I put out, this is a framework you use, set the KPIs, get the ROIs, it's gonna be super awesome. But in the end, the business unit comes in and tells you, actually, like now 4 or 5 months have passed, right? I actually want something else, right? So what do you do when that scenario actually happens? And the KPI now sounds like it wasn't what you actually started, right? So now that it's in production, now that they're now giving you new things, how do you actually handle that? That's like a challenge that the Knowtions team is facing right now, right? So several ways we've done that is actually essentially when we're delivering the oh, I think we just lost Jennifer. Uh-oh. Anyways, okay. Well, I hope she comes back. So when we're in the middle of it, what ends up happening is we do a lot of what we call back testing, right? So what we actually do is if the client is saying, okay, maybe we didn't reach that KPI, or I wanted a slightly different KPI, like, could you do it? Does your model still work for the new KPI? Blah, blah, blah. Like, how do we actually handle that, right? And the way that we actually do it is we're like, okay, well, here's the prediction. What happens is we would actually take that and back test it on the historical data, right? And essentially the question we actually ask them is, hey guys, if you had that predictive model, let's say last year or 2-3 years ago, this is actually the savings or the ROIs you can expect, right? And now if they come back to you and they're like, well, could you do it slightly differently, right? You essentially package the results just in a slightly different manner, and most of the times for them, they will accept that explanation, right? And this is one of those things where although like the nature of your work perhaps didn't change, the scope changed slightly, the packaging changed slightly, and now it sounds easy when I put it like this, but then Karen, you can attest to this. It's as when I put it like this, it's as when we tell our head of engineering, oh, it's just CRSS changes. It's actually really, really complicated to be able to recompute and backtest it from the beginning, because it actually influences. To be able to do the backtesting, you needed to have ETL the data in a certain way, so you actually have those other variables so that you could actually go back and recompute different ROIs for different KPIs in case your client or your team actually changes their mind, right? So one thing we've totally learned the absolute hard way is actually that when we're on day 0, when we're thinking about the KPIs, we should probably think about multiple ways to reach it and how we're actually going to backtest and simulate it so that we can actually figure out, we actually have the data in the right place so that when it comes time to do it, we can actually tweak it just a little bit and deliver what it is that they need, right? So that's how we found it, because a lot of the times it's going to take at least 6 to 8 months to actually get the production results. So if the business stakeholders needed something for either quarterly reporting or year-end reporting, the best way to get them that is actually to backtest it and forecast it forward. Oh, just in time.
Sorry there, I just got caught in limbo.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, Jennifer, what's your take on this? I hope you heard the question. All right, should I repeat?
yes, what, if you don't mind, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, so we discussed about ROIs and KPIs and metrics. ML metrics are something that researchers understand very well, ROC or whatever metric you decide to show. But then we have to also prove your model with ROIs and other kind of other KPIs. And now we have this. We have the situation, and your model is actually running. You have the buy-in. You actually convinced to use your model. Uh, what what are the hurdles you faced along the way when your model is already running? So were there any unexpected challenges in doing so? So yeah.
Yeah, so this part is universal to all industries. We always have to prove the value of our solution, and typically we do control and test. We separate our, let's say, our clients into a control group and a test group, and we apply the ML solution to the test group to relate to the bottom line. The interesting part about doing this in the insurance, don't buy. So it's going to take a long time to get statistically significant results. So what we found successful was to, once you've gotten at least 100 data points, you can then use Monte Carlo simulation to repeat this experiment 1,000, 2,000 more times. What will be our results? And doing this will allow you to also construct confidence intervals so that your results are not only down the road, like for the first month or so, we're seeing these results. But as we keep on doing this, theoretically, this is what's going to happen. And so that's how we dealt with the low volume in data in insurance industry.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. I have a question here from Tyrone. Let me see if we have more questions. Okay, so Tyrone is asking, in what format do you deliver the ROI report?
Yeah.
Slides, report? What is the?
Great question. We deliver them in Excel, actually, full on. That's dynamic with sensitivity analysis. So with KPI, the transition from KPI to ROI, the way to do it is you actually do sensitivity analysis. So you actually show what your ROI would be at different KPIs. And then we essentially have a slide that's a summary, right? That's how we do it.
Okay. I actually have a question for Jennifer. You mentioned about Monte Carlo simulation, right? And I feel like, so you are, if you don't have a generative model, you're kind of generating some different input data to try to cover as much as you can all possible metrics for your model. What is the idea behind using a Monte Carlo? And is that a data related for like a generative model?
It's not so much the model anymore when it's coming down to reporting ROI. So the model is now a player in this world of our clients, and we want to see that. So let's say we have a marketing model. We are going to target these clients using the model's predictions.
Jennifer, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're lagging a lot. And if you can turn off your video, maybe this will help.
Yes, let me try that. Okay, so let's say in the test group, the model was able to get 70% of the sure that this is statistically significant. So in other industries, we just wait and let the data come in, but in the insurance industry, it may take some time for more data to come in. So what we can do is we can use the results so far and use that to simulate more data. So if right now 70% of respondents are of the test group is responding, we can use that as a prior to, say, a Bayesian Monte Carlo simulation method
I
to
see.
draw more samples.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else has a question? So Tyrone asked if you can, Christina, if you can share some example of ROI model.
Oh, I was just actually typing a response. Well, we would be able
okay.
to do that because ROI models have really confidential data from the client.
Yeah. Okay. More questions? We still have a few more minutes.
Humidifier is the best work from home tool. Like, you're sitting in front of your computer 10 hours a day. Trust me, it's gonna kill your skin if you don't have one. So, not sponsored by a humidifier company, but it's pretty awesome.
Black Friday is coming up.
Yeah. How much is too much information to report? That's actually a really good question. How much is too? It depends on your audience, actually. If your audience is the C-suite executives, the level they will do it, and it kills my team. My team hates it when I do this, but it's literally one number, as in, oh, we're gonna give you an ROI of $18 million with our models, period. Right? And it drives my team crazy because that's essentially, it's out of context, doesn't have any of that, but that's literally the extent of comprehension. If you're talking about the DS team or the actual business units, they need super, super, super detailed. They will go into your cells and actually question each number you have. So it's like a really, really big range. We have 2 questions.
Yeah, Jennifer, can you see the chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Actually, and the last message I see is from Mark Donaldson. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yep, I'm in the chat.
So, okay, go ahead. So what do you think is the biggest challenges getting insurance models into production? After the stakeholders, go ahead.
I don't see that one.
No, it's on. I was reading to you. I was not sure if you were lagging or something, but you were like mute for a second. Yeah, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, for an external vendor, it's integrations. Don't underestimate integrations. Like, it's Kieran will cry when I say this, but it is integrations. Like, getting it into the mainframe of an insurance company is definitely a huge, huge challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, question from How. How does the metric differ in different business purposes in insurance models? For example, marketing versus underwriting.
Oh, we could spend a whole session on that. If you can understand how complicated the workflow is, and how's actually from our team, everybody. And afterwards, I'll show you a whole diagram of the complicated workflow of it. And imagine that each one of those boxes on the workflow can have a different KPI depending on what the objectives and the current status of the company is, right? So because of those factors, it's actually pretty complicated. And that's why it goes back to mapping that workflow out. Yeah.
Okay, I think another question for both of you.
Yeah.
In the age of AI business, is it irresponsible for executives, high decision makers, to only care about a single metric before they sign off on a project? Very good question.
It's a good question. It's a really good question. The way that I see it, it's less about irresponsible or lack of responsibility, but it's your role as a company to make sure that you're doing the right thing, that is actually entrenched into your culture to not do anything bad, especially in insurance, where essentially a single decision, and we've had people on the team get rejected for insurance or actually not get paid out for insurance for different reasons, that you actually are able to explain it. So as a company and as all of the business units, it's very rare that it's actually a high executive that makes the final decision. There's so many checks and balances starting from your team as a culture and into the business units, and so many checks and balances along the way that's actually when it gets to that final filter, that's how you're actually facing it, right? And to actually expect an executive running trillions of dollars, billions of dollars to get into the weeds on every single thing, it's also very, very difficult for them. So the way that I see that question is that I don't see it, perhaps the answer is not rather irresponsible or responsible, but as an executive, have you put in the right amount of checks and balances across the entire workflow to make sure that your team is doing the right thing?
Good. Jennifer, your take on this? If you can speak, I'm not sure if you're having audio issues. Yeah, maybe Jennifer is lagging again. Okay, more questions. I think I have to move on. Go, give me a heads up if you're here, Jennifer. Okay, I think we have no more questions.
That's a wrap.
Anything to wrap up? Oh, maybe let me see. Okay, how do you report on fraud detection? Alert volume and customer experience, are they combined in your ROI model?
Great question. Yeah. Great question, actually, because this gets into the KPI is not ROI, but they're interlinked, right? And so whether or not we link it together depends on what that KPI is, right? So for example, in alert volume and customer experience, so how, like, that one would be, for example, the KPI is straight through processing, which is how many claims you can automatically approve of without additional investigation, then maybe that is one. But if your KPI is something else, then you don't combine it, right? So again, that one is, it depends on your workflow, depends on your KPI and how you're driving that ROI, right? So there's no set answer on how you're gonna drive that ROI. It's more so how are these things linked together and how are you going to play the levers, right?
Yeah. Andrew, actually kind of a follow-up on his question. It was with respect with transparency issues. I think more like what we are doing with the ML and data we have, right? I don't know if that's the actual answer, but it's what we are doing with the data and also what kind of decision we are doing with the AI in this, using AI in business.
Explainability, it comes down to what Jennifer was saying earlier. It's like, how do we explain certain decisions and how do we actually move forward on this without, in a way that actually benefits consumers, because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. We as an engineers, researchers, we love linear models, but because they are very explainable, but when it comes to a deep learning model, we have big issues to interpret and provide interpretability. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
We lost Jennifer.
Yeah, I think I have another startup specific one. KPI versus ROI with a specific example. Sure, actually, do we have more time? I think I actually have another one at 4:15 that's gonna talk about the startup journey, but I'll quickly answer it, Daya, your question. The difference between a KPI and an ROI. Let's take fraud detection as an example, right? A KPI is raising the hit rate, and hit rate is essentially the amount of claims that you've found for fraud over the amount of claims that you've investigated. That is a KPI. That is not an ROI. An ROI is how many dollars that you can actually, you've detected in fraud and how much investigation resources you've spent in order to not pay out those claims, those fraudulent claims. So that's an ROI versus a KPI. Make sense? Cool. All right. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. This is our ending time, 4:15.
I don't know, because I have another one at 4:10 that I'm supposed to go to.
Okay. Well, I think we have no questions.
But Faraz, you're here. So am I supposed to go there now? I see during the session.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah. Apparently not. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining. And yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.